Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fultonland Live. Sorry if we started a little bit late. We were trying to set up some cool stuff for the show, and as usual, I boomered it up. So I'm going to keep working on that, and hopefully next week we'll get it figured out before the show's supposed to go live. So thank you all for joining. Amanda B, George Travlos, Eric Von Stugel, Lord Crackhead 33, Statistical Zero. Good to see you guys. Thanks for joining us. So today, as you guys see, we've got Mr. Anthony Figaro as our first guest for the Fultonland Live show. Anthony, how are you doing today?
I'm doing excellent, man. I know you chatted, and everyone is. I'm a little disappointed that there was technical difficulties. I had worked out this skit where I did this dancing, and I had these hula girls come in, but Jill couldn't get it together, so you guys didn't get to see it. So but yeah, we will have, they got to see it behind the scenes. And they'll tell you how great it was.
It was spectacular. It was. You're really missing out, but I can't lie. I was privileged to see it. So
there you go. Russ is finally acknowledging his white privilege. So it's just, it's progress. We're moving forward.
Damn it! I'm going to lean into it. There you go.
You got to, bro. You got
to. So aside from finally acknowledging your so-called white privilege, Russ, how are you doing?
Yeah. Well, because of that particular privilege, I'm just dandy all the time. I never have any problems, any issues that I ever have to deal with, and I've never pulled myself out of the mire to be a successful comic book artist. Not as successful as Anthony Figaro. Look at him go at the moment with that fantastic campaign. But yes, I'm doing fine. Thanks very much. Just working on Outliers projects, doing the turnarounds, and I've got some other bits and pieces that need to be removed from my schedule so that I can get on with pages when we get to that script at the end of the month.
Excellent. And for anybody who hasn't seen the videos that Russ has started producing on his channel, Comic Book Black Belt, if one of the mods could do me a favor and drop a link to Russ's channel. He's documenting his behind-the-scenes process for the Outliers artwork, and he's showing off pencil work, ink work, and he's kind of talking through his process. And so I think if anybody out there is either a reader who's interested in that sort of stuff, or if you're an aspiring artist and you want to see how the pros do it, I think Russ has got an excellent track record with Comic Book Black Belt of showing people what works for him, what doesn't work for him, and I think he does a good job of encouraging people to do stuff that would probably help the average aspiring artist, but he's always encouraging people to figure out for themselves what works, what doesn't work, and develop their own style. Is that fair to say, Russ?
Yes, thanks. Yeah, I'd say that. That's pretty much what I'm doing. There are no tutorials on my YouTube channel. There's simply insights into how I do it, and if that works for other people, that's great. And if anyone's got a better way of doing it, please tell me so that I can do it.
Yeah. That's the best. That's the best way to do it, Russ. I thought about if I was going to do it. At the end of the day, what you're saying is right. It's like, look, I can show you what I do, but some of the things that work for me may not work for you. But by watching the process, you may be able to discover your own process.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the way it is. I mean, my stud studio has become a lot messier since I've started using real inks. I'll have to, whoever goes and if you go and look at the channel, the new videos will actually show my new board because I got myself some new covering for my board. I had like a technical whiteboard. And I decided I'm doing lots of physical inks now, traditional inks. So I covered it in a sheet of wood, and I've made it into an inking board rather than a technical drawing board. Mm-hmm. And I've got loads of inspirational art. You can't really see it here, but it's all around me, pinned up on the wall. So I'm kind of burying myself in it at the moment and enjoying every minute.
There you go.
Nice.
Which is what it's all about. Everybody's got to enjoy themselves, whether they're making books or whether they're reading them. That's what it's there for. It's entertainment.
That's it. 100%.
Yeah, and speaking of making books, I'm going to put the link to Anthony's current book, Justice City Chronicles, in the chat. It's got... let me see if I can do this justice. So, Anthony, you and Mark either started working on it or you published it in 2005. Is that correct? And then it's kind of been remastered, and now you guys are currently adding new material. Is that correct? Do you have that right?
Pretty close. Pretty close. In 2005, the first incarnation of Justice City Chronicles came out, and it came out through an Ape omnibus through Ape Entertainment, and then there was a strong feeling that we should do another version of it with our own cover and colors and stuff, because it was a black and white omnibus. Mm-hmm. Marcus Wynn made Lightning Age Studios, and we made the book. It was a 12-page from the omnibus, and then he had another artist do another 12 pages, and that was the first issue. And that went through Dime. If you go on any search engine and type in Justice City Chronicles issue 1, it'll come up. And we launched it. We got into previews, the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And then that was going to drop in 2005. And then Katrina happened to me and just caused all kind of just complete devastation for a while. And in the process, I mean, because it was the first time I had ever been in print, and I think we just didn't, you don't want to go, you don't just want to lay down and die, and so we fought to try to keep it, and we did an issue 2 to it, and we tried to get, and then again, this is before crowdfunding, this is before the internet as we know it, social media as we know it. You're talking about 2007, 2008, this area around here. And I think MySpace was just up. DeviantArt had just unseated Pencil Jack and digital webbing. It just unseated them. Yeah, they just unseated digital webbing, right? And which is how I met Marcus, was through digital webbing, because they used to run wanted ads and all kind of shit. And then it was like the place, if you were into comics, to try to get in. This was the hub. This was the Twitter of the day, or whatever it was.
I had a short-lived account on digital webbing until a catastrophic back injury derailed my my nascent comic book career, and so I remember those days well. Yeah. So you guys met there on digital webbing. Yeah,
and so anyway, so we worked on the second issue, which basically I got to draw, and Marcus started to put it together. You know what I mean? He's got all the dialogue for it, puts it together, this, that, and the other. He's slowly putting it together. And then it just, life happens, man. He'd come down to New Orleans and live down here for a few months, I guess almost a year.
Okay.
And it was a fucking disaster. New Orleans has a way of changing you. And after that, he went back home, man, and he went, and we kind of, as far as the comic book stuff goes, it just kind of fell apart. And, I did God's, coming back, I did God's Hand. And, if you're a storyteller, if you're a creator, the fire is always there. The embers are always there, smoldering and burning and shit. And so you see things and it just stokes you up. And then, I seen all this stuff going on. And it's just like, man, this is, because I was doing conventions at the time, and I would see everybody selling, but I was selling prints, and I see everybody doing books and shit, and it just, it never sat right with me. I'm a storyteller. I tell stories, whether that's through word, whether that's through visuals, whatever the case may be. So I said, I'm gonna step out now, and I'm gonna do my own, because I ain't never, always worked on. I was always an artist first all the time. Mm-hmm. So I said, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna write, I'm gonna do the whole thing, man, And I did with God's Hand. I brought Marcus in to help me with the editing, with the layouts and shit like that. And then it was just like, well, look, this project to which we started this whole relationship on, you know, that we feel raw about, that never got its due. It never got its day. You know what I mean? That this is, and to be honest with you, that's what this is. This is the movement, right? This is the place for those who never got their full day to have their day. And let's see where you stack up. You know, you never get your shot 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years. Now you can have your shot. And you can have it on your own terms, in your own way, and you can put your shit out there, and it's either going to sink or swim on its own merits.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what any good creator wants. As much as it terrifies you, you know what I'm saying? Well, oh my God, what if it's not good? What if they pan it? What if it's you know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, you got to ask yourself, what can you live with and what can't you live with?
Right.
Yeah, if you can live with not taking a shot, and in your head wondering, oh, well, I would have been this and I could have been that, then go for it. I can't.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so we were like, let's dust this, let's give it its day. This is the era of giving it its day. We get, you know, and so here we are. So we have that second issue. I think the first issue, I think, you know, we're debating on it, but I think we're leaning to redoing that one from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
But the 20, I think, which has never been in print. And Marcus did such a great job remastering it, man. I mean, when he did it, it was like, you look at the pages and I'll kiss your ass if you can tell those pages are 10 to 12 years old. They look like they were just done.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? He did a great job with them. So, out of the book, you'll have a throwback part in it, but again, it never seen print before. So the bulk of the book will be all new material. The dialogues are all new material. I mean, it's all new material for anybody who gets it because they ain't never seen none of it before.
Yeah, well, it reminds me, the way you describe it reminds me a little bit of Flying Fortress Remastered, which is on my shelf behind me over here, where Eric Weathers and his co-creator had this 8-issue limited series that they produced and they sold at conventions.
Mm-hmm.
And that was their how to learn to make comics training. They just started doing it. They had no idea what they were doing, and they figured it out on the fly.
Right.
And it was an 8-year process. And to hear Eric tell it, it was excruciating at sometimes because he had all of, they had these ideas, they knew what they wanted to do, but their skills weren't,
right,
matching up on the page with what they had in their minds, but they just kept at it and kept at it. And really, there were many times where he told me, not that he told me many times, but he said there were many times during the production of the limited series where he just wanted to stop because it was so painful at times. But he just kept his nose to the grindstone, kept working on it. They put out all 8 issues, and that issue 8 came out in 2017, if I remember correctly. And then literally in less than a year, he was lettering Jawbreaker's Lost Souls and Graveyard Shift. And then those books get launched in the second half of 2018 and do phenomenal sales. And before you know it, Eric Weathers is the most in-demand letterer, certainly in the CG corner of indie comics. And I would argue that there's 2 guys I can think of, him and a guy named Wes Loker, who letters a lot of the Alterna books. And I've seen those guys letter more books in the last 3 years than any letterer in all of comics. So it just kind of, to me, it's a great illustration of, you got somebody who, like yourself, he was going through a hard time trying to get this stuff out there, but he, like you, he's a storyteller, and he just couldn't see giving up, especially after he'd already put so much time and effort into producing it. And then, you kind of fast forward to 2019, so that's 2 years, maybe a little less than 2 years from when they put out issue 8 of that limited series. And now he's producing this remastered graphic novel that I don't know. It's made something like 50 grand, I think, so far, and it's just you're one of those guys, Anthony, and Russ is one of these guys, and I'm one of these guys where there's points in our lives where and maybe there are false starts along the way. I know I had a big one back in 07, 08. I was about ready to break into the industry, and then I had this catastrophic back injury, and it just totally laid me out, for years. And then it was, the wife's biological clock started ticking, and she said, if we're going to start having kids, we need to get started.
TikTok.
So it was like, yeah, that you don't argue with that clock. I mean, it's going to keep on ticking regardless of whatever else is going on. So I said, all right, well, I put off the comics thing for a couple years. I can put it off for a couple more. And, a couple more turned into a lot more than a couple. But it was one of those things where I never, I never gave up on it. I always knew I was going to get back to it. But it was a question of looking for the right opportunity with things that were outside of my control and combining that with making certain opportunities happen with the things that were in my control. And when I was able to put those two things together, that's when I started working on comics again. So I'm curious, Anthony, you have talked about in God's Hand, which I have right here.
Beautiful looking book.
It is a beautiful looking book. You have talked about on other shows how Hurricane Katrina really turned your world upside down. It really turned the whole city of New Orleans upside down.
Mm-hmm.
And in that book, you were able to capture the feeling of the city of New Orleans as having recovered from Katrina, but still having some pretty deep scars from the trauma that the city experienced. And I visited New Orleans in 2007, so it was 2 years after.
It was still tore up in 07.
It was. So it was 2 years after the hurricane, and a lot of the city had recovered.
The French Quarter didn't take much. The French Quarter didn't take much hit. The CBD didn't take a lot of hit. The Dome did, but they fixed that up. But where you had what really damaged everything when the levees broke, right? The storm itself was bad enough, but then when the levees broke, all this water came through and just basically the lower Ninth Ward, Chalmette, like all this stuff south, man, they were underwater. Chalmette, I think, had like 18 feet of water, and they had refineries down there. That water got into refineries. And you want to talk about, I'm not that far down. I was up. Now I stayed for Katrina. I was here for the whole thing. Me and my dad stayed through the whole thing. But them boys down in Chalmette, which they in the book, I even make a joke about them. But the boys all them people down in Chalmette, they got it hit to where when they evacuated, they could never come back to their homes until it was all demolished because the oil got in the water and got all down in their shit. So you talk about a complete zero. They didn't even get to go back and salvage nothing. Yeah, that shit went down there and they had to bulldoze all of that shit. They had to level everything before those people could come back, and they came back to nothing but mud. That's what they came back to.
And didn't a lot of people move into areas like Houston?
100%.
Or like
Houston wanted to send their asses back home.
I was going to say, didn't a lot of them move into areas like Houston, certain parts of Mississippi,
the Baton Rouge, all that shit?
And a lot of those people just never moved back because
that too. You know what I mean? You definitely had that. I know it definitely altered everything. It really did. It altered everything in a way that, for better, for worse. I mean, you know what I mean? It's all in how you look at things. At the end of the day, it's how you look at the shit. You know what I mean? Everything happens the way it's supposed to happen, right? You can look at it as, pain, tragedy. There's only two paths you can go. You can either be scarred, victimized by it, or you can grow from it. There's two paths. You get to choose which one you want to go down. Katrina changed a lot of things. It altered my life in a way that if I had my choice, I wouldn't have done it that way. However, those things that happened made me the man that I am today. So I wouldn't change anything.
Life comes and gets you.
You know what I mean? Like it's it's your life, it's your path. You know what I mean? Things happen if you keep your eyes open. Sometimes you got to get whacked the fuck across the head, but you keep your eyes open, and all of a sudden, I mean, Joe was kind of hitting on it. Is that look for the opportunities that are around you versus the ones that you ain't got in your hands, and make what you can of those opportunities, and you'll be amazed at what opportunities come from those.
Which is why the comic book industry in the mainstream is such a confusion at the moment, because there are so many opportunities that they're just not taking hold of.
Yeah, I agree with you. You and I are on the same page.
My business, I had my business running. I wanted to get back into comics. I'd already drawn for Doctor Who and what have you, but I was thinking, right, I want to make my own books. But my books were, my schedule was maxed out. I was doing film storyboarding, and I had digital projects on the go. They were all sort of illustration, comic book based, but they were outside of the comic book industry. And then suddenly the coup turned up, and the governments of the world decided they were going to be idiots, and they screwed everybody over. And my business just fell off a cliff. What we are fortunate with is our government has been very helpful as far as self-employed businesses are concerned. And so I was able to say, right, I'm going to take this opportunity to try and create not only my own stuff creatively, but also, manufacture some kind of revenue stream for the future instead of just sitting on my backside or painting my fence like a lot of people did last summer. What you got to do, the reason for my diatribe is exactly what you're saying, is get out there and take the world with both hands. If you see an opportunity, move in, lean into it, use it, do something with it. Don't sit there and wait for opportunities to come to you, because they're not going to. 100%. You just got to get on with it.
If you don't, the funny part is, and I'm going to get back to Joe because I know I stepped all over where he was going.
Okay.
The thing about the opportunities is that this is the funny part about it. What you're saying is 100% true. My experience is that if you don't take the attitude of taking advantage of the opportunities that are in front of you, you'll never see the opportunities that are in front of you. Like that's the thing. There are opportunities everywhere. At all time, at any given moment in your life, there are opportunities. Whether they're the ones you necessarily think you deserve, want, or need, that's a whole different thing. But there are always opportunities out there. It's, can I put myself in the frame to see them? Yeah. Right. And basically work with what's in front of me and what I have. That then prepares me for other opportunities, which I can't see at the current moment because my vision is limited. But when I take these opportunities, I grow as a person because I got to do all these things I've never done before, this, that, and the other, which then all of a sudden now I can see other opportunities to which I didn't even know was there either in the first place. Right. And it's hard to get people to see it that way, especially when you have institutions that are trying to convince them otherwise. That are trying to convince them, which I think is a fucking real crime, is to try to convince people that they don't have opportunities.
Yeah, that's the thing. But BC, the trouble is that, without getting it onto a far, far broader subject.
Right.
So many of us are tax slaves. And it's easy for those who consider themselves more enlightened to sit back and go, why don't you think about the universe more? Why don't you think about life more? Why don't you open your eyes and broaden your horizons? But people are just trying to get by. They're just they've got their own lives. You can't judge anyone else without being in their shoes, whoever they are, whatever their opinions are. And so you can't. You have to give everybody that same chance, that same sort of freedom to be, it doesn't matter whether you're a Buddha, whether you're sitting up on the mountain as a monk and you're completely at peace and at one with the universe, or if you enjoy porn and you're out there driving your big car, it doesn't, and you don't give a shit about the universe, you're just doing what's in front of you. You've all got a valid life. You've all got a valid journey. And so some of us choose a different journey. And those are the journeys that we're all on. And so it is up to us to create stories and to see if we can get in touch with other people and maybe just, prick their interest to maybe look outside of the tax box that they're stuck within because of basically the environment we're all with.
Correct.
Yeah.
No, I 100%, and I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna get back. I said I would say it one time. This is what happens when you get people like me and Russ together. We start talking. It's out the box. But you're 100% correct on that. I think we have this funny saying when people get into all of this environmental, all this kind of stuff like this, and at the end of the day, you got somebody and they're like, thank you, Lord Crackhead. You got this guy. He's just like, hey, bro, I'm just a plumber, man. And I'm trying to feed my kids. Like I don't have time to kind of deal with all this because I'm just a plumber, man. You know what I mean? Like that's all I can do. And I think a lot of times that's what happens is people get they lose sight of what's real, and they get sucked into these worlds, man. And it's like, got you, but that's not going to make sure that my children are fed. That's not going to make sure that these things are going to happen. I think what is the crime, what I was saying before, the crime is that you're not giving people the opportunity to fail. I think that is the greatest opportunity that anything can give you, is the freedom to fail. And that if you're told ahead of time that you're already a failure and everything's already fucked, then you will never have the opportunity to fail. And so you will never take chances. You will never take risks. You will never move forwards, and you will never feel what it feels like to hit that. You know what I mean? No. And you'll never know what it's like to be free, to go out there, to try something you never tried before, and to feel what it feels like to be terrified, scared to death because they're going to say this and he's going to say this, and what if this and what if this, and then go through this, and on the other side feel this thing of, wow, this accomplishment thing. Yeah. You know what I mean? And you'll never have that. And to rob people of that fucking experience is a serious fucking crime. Now, Joe, you were saying something about the scars of Katrina, and me and fucking Russ went way the fuck off on the reservation on that one.
No worries, man. It applies. I mean, I was talking about how in 2007 when I visited New Orleans, the wound that Katrina had caused, it had closed over, but it was still raw in 07, because I would be walking or driving and there would be, let's say, 3 buildings that looked fine, and then 1 building that was all boarded up, and then 2 more buildings that looked fine. And so it was almost like in that area of a street, it's almost like you got this black eye, on an otherwise healthy row of houses. And it was all boarded up because, it had been condemned. Let's say there was, severe mold damage, and the owner couldn't afford to get it mediated, and they just basically had to abandon the building. So there was a lot of that. I drove past the 9th Ward, and it was just heartbreaking. 2 years later, and it looked like a war zone. And so one of the things that I was thinking about when I was reading God's Hand was how well you captured this feeling of, and I don't think you have to be from New Orleans or to have visited New Orleans to pick up on it. I think the average reader probably will pick up on this in God's Hand, but I got the sense that in the story that you told, the way that the characters fit in New Orleans, the way they're a part of New Orleans, and the way that they talk about it, I got the sense that they and the city had recovered from Katrina, but their scars ran deep.
100%.
And so it got me thinking, and one of the reasons why I asked you to be our first guest on this show is I was thinking about how it took such a enormous amount of perseverance and a continual commitment at persevering through what happened with Katrina in New Orleans to not only get through it, but after it was all over, and let's say, the immediate damage was cleaned up in a lot of cases, or it, whether that meant recovering property that had been flooded or just demolishing it and then building over, whatever it was. I mean, different people had to do different things, but there's a lot of psychological trauma that happened as a result of that. And I know that there's a lot of people in the audience, not just that are watching this show now, but will watch it on replay, who have been through very difficult times in their lives. And I think that just about every person has moments where they have to actively choose. They're either going to endure the difficulties that they're going through, and they're going to do the best they can with whatever resources they have, and then they're going to try to take whatever they've got left at the end of that experience and then use it to learn and grow from it, and ideally become stronger than what they were before, that stuff happened. So I'm just curious if you think that there's a correlation with the difficulties you went through with Katrina itself, and then the aftermath of Katrina in your personal life, how it affected you. Do you think that there's a correlation there between those experiences and the way that you and Mark have been able to kind of come out of that, not only as presumably stronger, healthier people, but now you're breaking into the comic book scene, which is very difficult for anybody. It's even more difficult, I think, to do it in the indie side of the comic book world. And then arguably, it's even more difficult to do it in the kind of circles that we run in, where a lot of times we get tagged with all of these ridiculous false allegations of being istophobes, and yet you guys are being successful.
Man, damn! I knew me and Rush should have just kept talking because you got all. That's a hell of a question, man. It makes me think on different levels than I normally think. The truth of the question, I could sit here because I got a fucking PhD in bullshit, and I'm a social engineer. I tell people all the time, and I could make the core. I mean, I don't know. The truth of the answer is I don't know. You know what I mean? Because I never think about that because of the things that happened during Katrina. Again, where it sent me, where it put me. Right. I didn't handle it well. I didn't handle it well at all. My solutions to Katrina and the things that happened to Katrina and all of that stuff were to basically, to anesthetize myself and to become a menace to society. Right? That was my solution. Fuck the system. If you work, if you punch a clock, if you fucking pay taxes, you're a fucking idiot. You're a fucking square. You know what I mean? That I was going to basically fucking pillage and rape the fucking system and everything around me. I had a very bad attitude about life, right? And that led me into some really dark fucking places. And so, you end up in this place where you have this moment of fucking clarity, and you're like, something's wrong. You know what I mean? Like, and it breaks through everything, all levels, all perceptions, it doesn't matter. It just when it hits you, man, when you get hit. It erases and wipes out everything that has no substance or value. It just gone. And when that shit hits you and you are left with empty, you realize there is nothing in my life of substance and value. And that's a fucking moment, man. It's a moment. You know what I mean? And fortunately for me, and again, without getting way the fuck into this, bro, because this is a fucking huge ass story.
Yeah.
Fortunately for me, man, the fates to be, however you want to say it, you know what I'm saying, put me in a position to be around some people who showed me how to live my life, right? I needed to go through all of that pain. I needed to go through all of that shit. I needed to see all these things in order to get to that place. And it was those people, man, who, who belong. I'm in a 12-step program. It was those people who showed me how to live my life. They showed me these things. They taught me, you know what I mean, how to live and how to, and again, that's what then put me on the path and put me in that direction. You know what I'm saying? And so, and again, by doing that, all of a sudden, tumblers start falling down. They start falling in place. Again, maybe they were always there. Maybe they always would have been there. I just can't see it, man.
Yeah.
I can't. What's happening, Phil? I can't see those things. You know what I mean? And today, you know, I'm in a place where I still can't see them. But what it does is it puts me in a mind frame of, okay, well, what's in front of me? Let me do that. And let me make the best of what I do have before I start bitching about what I don't have. You know what I mean? Like if I'm bitching about what I don't have, you know, because I work with guys and guys call me up and they bitching about something, and I'm like, okay, well, what can you do? Well, this have you done that? No. Well, then fucking do that first, then fucking call me and tell me that that's not working. Because 9 out of 10 times when you start doing the shit that you can do, that you haven't done, and you do that, all of a sudden these issues you have seem to just magically fucking just not vanish, but all of a sudden your mind gets into a place where it's like, gotcha, that's just this, that's just that. And all of a sudden it just levels itself out and you're like, okay, here's where I can go, here's what I can do. Let me focus on that. And it becomes a whole new thing. You know what I mean? But again, I can't take credit for any of that. I had to be a complete fuck up. It'd be rescued, basically, you know, from destroying myself.
Life rarely gives you what you want, but it nearly always gives you what you need.
Always.
You just rarely know that you need it. That's the way it works.
I've been taught that if I reduce my my expectations, right? If I reduce them down, all of a sudden my serenity and peace go up. So you know what I mean? It's finding, you know, anyway, it's finding a place inside of yourself where you realize you're okay. You've always been okay. You're always going to be okay. So whether I'm fucking drawing comics or I'm sitting at the fucking park feeding the ducks on the fucking bench, I'm all right. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that fucking piece right there, you know, it doesn't fucking, all this doesn't matter. It doesn't. You know what I mean? It really doesn't at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying? Because it's this right here. If this ain't right here, none of this is right. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I'm a millionaire. It doesn't matter if I'm making comic books and I beat Cyberfrog. If I'm not right on the inside here, I could easily end up getting my head filled with so much shit that it explodes. You know what I mean? And then it's done. And then I'm done as over. You know what I'm saying? So I do think that the experiences that I went through for Katrina put me in a place to be able to reflect on those things. And those reflections, I think, will definitely make their way into the work. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think, you know, life is like that. You know what I'm saying? If you go through these things and you are able to be grateful about the things that have happened to you, then your perspective on them is different. My relationship with Katrina is different now than it was when I was going through it. It happened. The same shit happened. It's just my relationship with it is different. And it definitely colors my relationships today. You know what I'm saying? For sure. So yes, there's a correlation for all that shit just to say yes.
Well, with that, I'm going to bring up your campaign and we're going to take a look at it and go through it a little bit. If StreamYard would cooperate. There we go. So in this book, you've got the description here, a futuristic superhero tale of war, corruption, and the bonds of family. And I'm going to go through the campaign here in just a minute. But first, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask what, in this story, we all have a pretty good idea of what war is, what corruption is, and what the bonds of family are. But in this story, how is it that the bonds of family relate to the characters in terms of how they react to living in this futuristic world where there's war and corruption, etc.?
Okay. So Joe's coming with the heavy questions and shit. He's like slinging the heavy questions down. The funny part about all of this is that when we originally wrote this, right? And we were, you know, again, we were fucking young. Yeah. And well, we're younger than we are now. It's not like we old, you know what I mean? I think Marcus wrote the story because Marcus wrote the original 12, and I think he wrote the original 12 straight up. It was his homage to the best of the 80s.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It was his homage to all that.
Mm-hmm.
And when he first wrote it, it was this 12-page story that again introduced a character, introduced his mentor, and then kind of told the story that he wanted a specific, he was going to graduate and get a job and whatnot, and he wanted to go take this gig. And so the mentor was like, this is a bad gig. You don't want to do this because let me tell you why. And so there's this chunk of it where you're told about this great war that happened 30 years before.
Yeah.
Right. And you're told about the villain of the war. You're told about things that they don't necessarily teach them. Right. And so when we went back to this, and then the second part of the second issue we did was all about Nero basically, going and graduating from this institution, right? And then that was going to be, now it's the long, you know what I mean? But we were making this up on the fly. I mean, that was the thing. Marcus and I got together, and then Marcus had this idea, and then he brought me in, and him and I just started basically just running this thing together. I think one night in 2006, we were in a hotel in Chicago. We went to Chicago Wizard World in Rosemont, and we ran out like, I don't know, 8 chapters of this thing where we just totally just the whole thing, And then when we came back, last year, we realized we never wrote any of that stuff down. So we're like, I think I remember, and it was this thing. And so, but now, like you're saying, our sensibilities are different. So it was cool to take the original frame and then start to remaster even the original frame of all of this and start to push it into shape. And so then it became, the mentor became the father. And then one of his, and we were like, okay, so let's, you have the, he's adopted son, the real brother, and those dynamics. And the expectations of family, right? And how that can affect you,
Right.
The expectations of legacy and how that can affect you, right? The pressures that it can put on yourself, right? The frictions between brothers, one's legacy brother, one could be even legacy brother, if not better than legacy brother. If one was older than the other, then it would be him and not him. You understand? And what kind of pressure that puts on him now is being the older brother, right, who has the legacy, but the younger adopted brother has more potential, right? And so how does that fear and that pride, right, corrupt? How does that corrupt you to do things that, again, you feel like, or you tell yourself are the right things, but you end up you could easily become a tyrant, right? And then on the other side, feeling like maybe you should have had that position, but you don't, right? And instead you get this assignment, this shitty assignment, and you think, I am destined for great things. Why am I getting these shitty assignments? Why can't I do why can't I be out there and flex my power? The whole thing, like the Anakin and the Clark Kent when he's on the farm and he tells his dad, I could do all these great things, yet I gotta, why? You know what I mean? And that whole concept of destined for greater things, I don't know what it is, but I don't think it's just going on a mission and shooting people and things like, you know what I mean? And so you get to start, but that plays out in that dynamic. You use that dynamic of those three to play out these greater ideas. You know what I'm saying? And then you kind of set it in this sandbox of, okay, father, son, here's the other son. Now he's on this, he's involved in this thing that could possibly tear everything from the last 30 years down and put everything back into this bloody war. Right. And so that's what we're setting those bonds up in this issue, where you can kind of see even from the dialect, right? How one brother talks to his father versus how the other brother talks, and the relationships between them and how they're different. One is more formal, one is not. You know what I mean? And how that colors the characters and how it's going to color how they're going to react to this next thing that's going to happen. You know what I'm saying? And so,
Yep.
and then watching them go down these paths, and then watching them either find their way back and grow from them, or be destroyed by them. I mean, that's the fun stuff. You know what I'm saying? To see, to write a character and that everyone can identify with, because we all have these human, the human condition. We all suffer from the human condition, right? And so to bring your readers in to this place and say, here are these characters, here are their flaws, have you identify with them, and then push them in these directions. You know, some of them are aspiring, and some of them are, hey, if you don't watch it, here's where you'll end up, here's where you'll go.
Right.
You know? So,
yeah, so
I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it does. It sounds like I'm gonna go back to your description here, where it says it's an 80-page knockdown drag-out that is rooted in action adventure cartoons of the 80s. And so, is it fair to say that you've got this futuristic world that's in turmoil, and that's the backdrop, and then you've got this family drama that is kind of being... I don't know if it's accurate to say that it's being expressed through the actions of the characters. You can tell me if that's...
It's close on point. It's just yeah, absolutely. But what it is it's also tilted even more specific to the Nero character, right? So you're seeing more of the Nero character, who is the one, I have great potential. Why am I not, like I told somebody the other day, I don't know who it was, but it was the line from Apocalypse Now, right? I wanted a mission, you know, and for my sins I was given one. So it's that concept that Nero, with his arrogance and whatnot, thinks he can, you know, I should be doing these great things, and then he's set in this position of you will have to do great and terrible things in order to keep this from turning into a complete bloodbath, you know. And now when the clock is on and the pressure's on, it's like, this is not a training session. This is not school. This is real life with real consequences, and there are real decisions that have to be made, and there are real at the end, there are real consequences that you make the wrong decision, people will die. And how that altered, you know, and you have the option of going, this is too much, I quit. And what inside of you pushes you forwards, you know, because you know what I mean? Because Nero's in this place of, I want the hero status, I want the adulations, I want the parades, I want to be the Superman, right? But what does it mean when to do these heroic things, to do these things means you're going to have to wake people up out of a slumber. You're going to have to wake people up out of mediocrity. You're going to have to wake people up out of their comforts. And they're not going to want to do that.
Yeah.
They're not going to want to do that. And that's, and so now what? Now you're not going to be the yay and the parades and shit, but it's the right thing to do. What do you do? And you look at the human condition of cowardice in a very real way. That you can sympathize with him if he turns and runs. You can sympathize with that. You have to give that. You have to give that element there, so that the reader understands. Because we've all felt cowardice. We've all been cowards. You understand? Like, that's the whole thing. It's like, but there's this point where it's like what we were saying. The choice. Yeah, it may mean sacrifice sometimes, but at the end of the day, you have to live in your own skin.
Yep.
And when the lights are off and there's no one around and it's all dark, that's your fucking truth. That is your fucking truth. When the demons come for you, it will be there. And if you are living your life the best you can, especially when no one's looking, and doing the next right thing the best you can, you will sleep like a fucking baby. You know what I mean? And so it's pulling that. How do you fucking do that in an entertaining, cohesive way, using visual storytelling, and it's trying to inject that into this story at the same time, where you're not consciously fucking aware of this shit, to where, because I don't want to be one of these people that yells the shit so loud that it's like, oh yeah, I get it, turn it down a little bit. I'm just a plumber. I just want to read a good comic book and be entertained. You know what I mean? You want to keep it in that realm as well, you know.
But isn't that isn't that what's going on at the moment? That's why comics are suffering in the
100%.
mainstream, because
100%.
they're not giving people the opportunity to make their own minds up.
100%.
You know, there's always been politics, there's always been relationships and all
100%.
kinds of stuff in comics. But what the writers did was they let readers make their own mind up. And there's nothing more important than that, especially with the subject matter you're talking about. Like you say, when the lights are off, and you're on your own, did you do the right thing? Okay, it doesn't. It's like you want, if you're religious and you want to get into heaven, do you do the kind thing because you want to get into heaven, or do you do the kind thing because it's the right thing to do? Is it naturally within your nature to do the right thing rather than think you're going to get a reward for it?
100%. Yeah, same way. I feel like, don't do drugs, kids.
Yeah,
don't do drugs.
Because look what happened to us.
Yeah,
I think that
Yes.
what you said, Anthony, about and Brian here, Dojo Kun sums it up. You are who you are when no one's watching, and
100%.
so
The measurement of your character.
yeah, and so with this character of Nero in the book, in your overview, it said it's 80 pages. So of that 8 chapters you were talking about earlier that you and Mark knocked out in that hotel room, in this 80-page book, how much of Nero's obviously we know from your overview that the book starts off Nero, he's trained all his life and now he's on his first big mission, and he gets thrown into this situation where he's got to make sounds like a life-changing decision with.
Well, it's funny you say that, because it's, if I had to accurately say it, I would say that, and this is how I find it to be in my experience anyways, is that usually in those types of situations, it has to be done to you, for you, by a power greater than you. And that's the fates of the universe, or whatever you want to call it. That's what it is. So no, Nero does not choose. He is thrown into a situation where he must choose. And you know what I mean? Because otherwise we'll just put the choice off till tomorrow. Well, I'll deal with that tomorrow. You know what I mean? So the book, basically, the first arc of the book ends with him being thrown into a situation that he will have to choose. The first part of the book is kind of letting you see who he is, letting you know what I mean, see. And at the same time, coloring the world around it, giving you these clues, foreshadowing all these things like, who's this guy? And here's the terrain. And here's what happened 30 years ago. And here's what's going on now. And here's what he wants to do. And here's what this guy wants to do. So you start to get this picture of the world that you're living in. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden it's like, whoom, you're thrown in. And what we're going to do is more than likely, I like to be optimistic, but more than likely the book will be 100 pages. And what we'll wind up doing with probably those 20 for sure, maybe even 30, but definitely the 20 will be an expansion of the world. We'll put in basically what will go into those pages is what's going to be in the next 2 chapters probably. The mercenaries, the terrain, the stuff that, you know what I mean? Like all this stuff to basically, don't get me wrong, to whet your app. Let me put it like this. I am semi-copying Russ in this situation. I saw what Russ did in the back of his book, and I was like, I'm fucking doing this the next time I put out a fucking book. It was because it was fucking cool. I love that shit. You know what I mean? Like, you get the story, and that's all fucking cool. Don't get me wrong. It's great. You know what I'm saying? But then it's like, oh, look at this. And here's this concept sketch. And here's some behind the scene tidbits of knowledge and shit. You know what I mean? Like I love the fucking director's cut Blu-ray shit. Like I'm into that. I want to hear the creator's voice. What were you thinking when you did this? Where did you know what I mean? Like I'm all about that. So if I can include that in there, you know what I'm saying? Then it's like, you got this part of the story, right? Gotcha. Now here's where this is, and here's some cool. Check this character out, and check this character out. Because if I could do it, and I could pause time, right? I would do all 8 chapters, and then pop in and be like, guess what? I got all 8 chapters here. I can't wait to show everybody. You know what I'm saying? But that's not the way it is, you know. So that's probably that's what we're gonna do, man.
It's good because you get to connect even more so with your audience.
Dads are extremely important, Leroy.
Yeah. you're letting them into your process and kind of opening that up, as well as giving extra in your books. So, for instance, if you have the opportunity to later take those books and strip them down into floppies and get them out to a wider audience, you know that you're giving the best value to everyone, to the wider audience, by
100%.
making sure they get a chance to read your story, because that's what it's all about. And then to your backers, you're giving the best quality work. They're getting
you
it
and I
first.
right here, Russ.
Yeah,
right
and
here.
they're getting everything, and it's so you're keeping everybody happy and
100%.
providing that content.
100%. Yeah, 1000%, bro, for sure. So that's kind of the idea of what you're going to get in this.
It looks really good. I really like it. It's very colorful as well. I really like the colors.
It's probably, and it's designed for that. You know what I mean? Like in God's Hand, I had to watch that. You know what I'm saying? Because again, especially the first time I was in there, it was like, people were like, "Oh no, man, make it bright and all this stuff." And I'm like, "Yeah, but it's a fucking dark fucking story. Like it's by monsters and shit." It's like, so you got to watch how you pop the colors. Whereas this is a 80s action adventure style, as far as visually goes. You know what I mean? Yeah. Visually, that's what it is. So you want it to kind of pop off like that because that's the visual thing that you're going for.
Perfectly suited. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I do like the color in this book, the way that it really helps to, because you got a lot of heavy blacks in here, which is one of those things, just like any other element of comic book art. You can, when you use it for specific purposes, it can be very effective in helping to set the tone for the book. But when people go overboard with any one element, then it throws the balance off. And so I like the fact that you've got these heavy blacks in here, not just for the figures, but also in the backgrounds. And then in a way, you balance that out with these bright colors, and you're still able to keep those different elements on the page separate. And they don't all run together. They don't all look like they're on the same plane, but you're able to use the combination of those heavy blacks and those bright colors together and really give a three-dimensional effect there.
This started out as a black and white only, though, didn't it?
Yeah, the original 12 was a black and white, and then we moved into, like I said, Marcus, both of us did not feel like my dad chased me down to Brawl one time when I was adult, take a swing. I think he pretended to call my dad used to, if I came home crying one time about a fight, and he made me go. This is what my old man said. He says, "If you don't go out there and take care of business, you got to deal with me." And so that was my motivation to take care of business.
I used to have to deal with my mother. So it's 5 foot nothing of fury.
Yeah, you know what I mean? They can be just as tough. What's happening, Ryan? They can be just as tough.
I nearly got hit with an iron, except she'd plugged it in. Yeah. Trust me, it was. We'd cut from the same jib there, Russ. You know what I mean? It was. What I was going to say about the black and white and the color is that often, and kids go out and find how to draw the Marvel way. The original one, not the one that I was on in the UK, but the original one, How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, by Stan Lee and John Buscema. And there's a bit in the back about spot blacks and inking. And also I've spoken to a couple of pros about this, finding out about the way that they produce. And it's important to ink properly. Don't rely on your colors. Okay, so what you can see here is some perfectly beautifully drawn, stylish black and white pages that have been very, very cleverly colored. Okay, so it's coming. It wasn't done with that in mind, but it really does work very well, and that's because the inks were so strong in the first place. And so you can look at something like Mobius, which doesn't have an awful lot of spotting. But that's because he was completely in control of what he was doing in the whole process. And often inkers, there will be, especially those that are early to it, will be thinking that the colours will fill in where they're not producing the ink, where they're not getting it quite right. and that's why spotting is so important, and why making sure, even if it's not deep shadow, that you get your line weights correct, and have distance as well as lighting produced properly on your inks, and then let the color work sort of sit on top of that, enhance it, rather than just expecting the color work to do the job for you.
It's definitely a balancing act, because I have, when I moved into making prints and shit, you know what I mean? I don't do my own coloring, but when I moved into making prints and shit, and, you know, hiring colors and shit, it would be like, I could see where I was over rendering things, because I wasn't used to that. I wasn't used to having color at all. And so you'd put these colors on and it would just kill the rendering. And you're like, what the fuck? Like, you know, and it's so bizarre to me. It took a long time for me to get used to that. I would have a black and white image that would look one way, and then I would put color on it and it would look completely different. And I'd be like, God damn, son of a bitch. And so it's learning how you do your lines and stuff that will allow the colors to come in and complement. So where you're in that sweet spot where and again, getting the right colorist. That's the other thing. Getting the right colorist who works really well with your style is crucial. You know what I'm saying? The guy that I worked with 3 colorists on God's Hand, but the guy who did the middle part, chapter 2, fell in love with that dude. That guy will color all my stuff. We got a different guy who colored that piece, but that guy colored the 3 covers, right? He colored those 3 covers, which is why they pop like that. You know what I mean? He colored those that 3. One? Yes. And
so this is the main.
That's the throwback cover. Like if you look up, I don't know if one of y'all can, I guess you're sharing, Joe. Russ, if you type in Justice City Chronicles, you'll see that cover will probably come up. This is a throwback cover. And what we did was, you'll only get this through Indiegogo, but it's basically our homage throwback cover. The original cover, it's my style from 2005. This is a modernized version of that.
Got it.
And it's been recolored in the whole 9 and all that stuff. He colored these too.
So that's the main one, and then these are.
Well, this will be
your Indiegogo variants.
Well, this is your So the one with the head on the pike is the Indiegogo exclusive. Okay. Right, and I learned this with the God's Hand thing. Right, so with God's Hand, I had 3 covers. Okay. All right, I had the Indiegogo exclusive, which was a charcoal. I had the colored version, which was the standard. Now, what that meant was that standard copy I could sell to anybody. Yeah. I could sell to the public, to the stores, to whatever. And then I had an artist variant, which I could sell to anybody. But I limited the artist variant to so many, so that there would only be so many of those, and then that's a wrap on that. But that's what we're doing with. There it is.
There it is.
There's your 2000. There's your 2005 version. It
says it 2005. So.
That's your 2005 version, correct?
And you can see the way it's been upgraded as well.
Correct.
The new cover is,
and that's what we want to do. We're thinking about doing an amalgam card where we have one half with the original and one half with the new, and doing a little trading card out of it and shit. But that's the what's happening, Mo. Mo is one of the hardest working men in the chats, bro. There's a few of them, man. But that was, and so that's the Indiegogo exclusive cover, because that's the homage cover. That's the throwback cover. Again, that's the cover we felt like we started with, you know what I mean? And we wanted to put that back on there, So that's the original. But Carlos did the colors for those, man. And again, finding someone who can do your colors over your lines in a way that you find a colorist that you don't have to give a lot of direction to, hold on to them. You know what I mean? They just, you pair up sometimes, bro, and they get it. They get they get your vision. They can see your lines. They lay it down, and you look at it and you go, exactly. You know what I'm saying? And I've been fortunate enough to hook up with a guy like that. Hopefully no one goes. Look, Russ is trying to steal him right now. Let me go check out this guy's name. Hold on. Oh, shit.
All right. Well, cool. This is, I think, a cool looking book. I backed it prior to asking Anthony if he would be on the show, but in the interest of full disclosure, I'll say that I did back the book. Um, so let's go back up here, and I've got this. We've got, let's see, 6,801 US dollars, 69
Mhm.
backers. So
Nice.
we're gonna do a bit of an art reveal for the Outliers, and then I want to come back to this campaign page, and we'll do a refresh on it, and we'll see if we picked up any backers during the show. So I'm gonna stop sharing for the moment, and then Russ, if you're able to bring up.
Tis there.
Now we're gonna get to some real artwork. You see?
Oh,
Oh,
that's the turnaround for our midget speedster, Mini Mart.
Yeah,
Mini
so-
Martin midgets be I like that.
so this is a dwarf named Martin, and he gets the nickname Mini Mart from his teammates, and he decides to roll with it. He's a very fun guy, very laid. Well, he's got. I won't say he's laid back because he's actually pretty hyper, but he's got a very fun personality. He, if he's not the life of the party, then it's only because he hasn't shown up yet. He's a very fun guy, and he just absolutely loves this whole new superhero thing, which is new to everybody on the Outliers team. The volume 1 kicks off where they're a newly formed team and they have to figure out how to work together. And so Mini Mart is a fun-loving guy. He's a prankster. And for those who were watching the show last week when we revealed Terrence Hightower, aka High T, Martin is kind of like the yin to Terrence's yang. So these two are sort of like an odd couple for those who are familiar with the old show. Or I think there was even a remake film.
There's High Tea again.
Yeah, so visually they're very different, but they're also very different in personality. And yet, even though at first glance you might think that these guys have nothing in common, they do, and they discover that they do, and they're going to find out that they're going to become very good friends. So it's a little bit reminiscent of, for people who used to read or might still read the Fantastic Four. There was that relationship, that friendship, and that brotherhood between Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, and Ben Grimm, the Thing. And Johnny would love antagonizing Ben, and Ben would love getting revenge on Johnny. And at any given moment, they might be bickering with each other, but when things are getting real, and they have to take care of business as superheroes, then those guys are absolutely watching out for each other, working together, and there's really a deep-seated friendship that is beneath the surface of their bickering and their I don't know, kind of bantering, I guess you would say.
Yeah, I think
Teammates.
if anyone's out there and they're wanting to create their own characters, do listen to what Joe talks about. He really, I mean, we saw today with Anthony as well, and the amount of effort and thought that had gone into the backgrounds of the characters and the inner workings of these people. And it really does make a difference when you're producing a character, like I'm producing the visuals to create this sort of library of the characters or the turnarounds. When they can come up with the character as well, not just the physical aspects of it, and sort of like what they might do in the story, but also the things that go on in their heads and how they interact with the other characters, because it all adds layers to the story that will end up, obviously increasing the enjoyment of the whole thing, and it does make it easier for you to draw the characters as well. We'll be
When
honest.
so when in that vein, if could you go back to Minimart for a second,
Yeah,
Russ? I
sure.
realize
Yeah,
I forgot to talk about his powers. You mentioned he was a speedster. So
yeah.
the reason why he got the name Minimart wasn't just for his height, although that is, part of the play on words. His so the way his superpower works is that his body metabolizes sugar in a way that it essentially fuels his super speed, and so he's constantly eating junk food, drinking sodas and energy drinks and all this stuff because he's constantly refueling his tanks, as it were. And so they called him Mini Mart because he was always going down to the convenience store and buying candy bars and Twinkies and getting a big gulp from the 7-Eleven. And so when he starts out, as I said, the team is newly formed at the beginning of Volume 1. And so they're new to this superhero thing. They're new to costumes and gear that they've never used and whatnot. And what Martin found out was that he doesn't quite have the control over his powers that he'd like to have. And so after knocking himself out from running into doorways and cars and whatnot as he was running around super fast, he decided it'd probably be a good idea to put a helmet on, and he's going to catch all kinds of hassle from his teammates about how he looks with his helmet and whatnot. And he starts out, kind of paranoid that he's going to run out of fuel while he's out on a mission. So he's got this backpack full of junk food that he's bringing with him, and he's going to catch all kinds of hassle from his teammates, especially from High T, about how ridiculous he looks with his backpack and his helmet and whatnot. And then Mini Mart's going to give it right back to because Terrence is no fashion prince either. And so I'm really looking forward to people getting to see how those two guys interact with each other. And we'll see some interesting ways in which Mini Mart uses his speedster powers that I don't think we've seen before in comics.
All right, so move on to Bombshell.
Yeah, let's go on to Bombshell. So here's the second of the female characters that we've revealed so far. Her name's Bombshell, and she's one of the villains in the book. She will. I say the book. I should say the story arc, because it's not like she makes a single appearance and then she's gone. But she is somebody who, when she got her superpowers, she didn't necessarily feel like going out and being a hero, and instead she decided she wanted to go out and use her powers to enrich herself. Basically, I mean that's what it comes down to. She was tired of, as Anthony was mentioning earlier, she was tired of having to really work hard to earn a living and just barely scrape by. And when she discovered that she could essentially charge up inanimate objects with energy and make them explode, she thought that that could probably be used to get herself the kind of money and material possessions that she had wanted but couldn't necessarily afford. So she's one of the characters that our team, the Outliers, is going to have a bit of a hard time with, because she can not only charge up something like a ping pong ball and make it explode, but she could charge up something like a car and make that explode. And so basically the way her power works is that she takes the potential energy in an object and converts that to kinetic energy, and it essentially explodes out. And she also has to figure out how to work with her power, because when early on when she caused something to explode, the shrapnel almost took out one of her eyes. So we see in the headshots there, she's got a mask on, and then she's got some goggles, and so just like Mini Mart with the helmet, the backpack, just like High T has to figure out, what kind of clothes can he wear that will work with his power. They have to figure these things out as they go, and we'll see that in Volume 1, which is chapters 1 and 2 of the 12-chapter story arc, and we'll see that through the course of all 12 chapters. I'm glad you guys like what you see. Jeremy says, can't wait to see what happens when she does that to something that's already an explosive. Yeah. I mean, imagine something like a grenade or a stick of dynamite that's already explosive, and then she does her thing and amplifies the effect. So I think that's about it for the art reveals today. Hope you guys like what you see. And I'm going to let's stop sharing that, and let's go back to the Justice City Chronicles campaign and see what we've got.
That's wrong. It's wrong, Joe. You're gonna show these people that work that Russ just did, and then bring them back to this. Russ, terrible.
No.
I know. I say that because Russ is like me, and I fucking hate compliments. I'm so fucking like, no. I know it. So anytime I meet somebody like this, I'm always like, oh yeah, that shit's good, because I know. But I know, man.
Something I learned a while ago, which for any other artists out there, if you're looking for your own style, start appreciating other people's work. When I was a young man, it's like, oh my God, Kirby, what are all those big blocky knees about? I don't like that. And what is that? What on earth is Rob Liefeld doing? But I had my Kirby moment. I had a Kirby moment where I realized that Kirby was a fucking genius, okay, and that I didn't know shit. And from that point on, I started to appreciate all kinds of different art, all kinds of different styles. There's no doubt that there are some people out there that are using style over substance and don't know what the basics are about, and that never works. Okay, you got to understand the basics before you can start breaking the rules, stretching anatomy, doing all kinds of stylistic stuff. Once you got those things underpinning you, you can go anywhere and do anything with comics. It's about looking cool, okay, and you can see that in all the greats. And so I get to appreciate so many different styles. And so it isn't like you can't. It's apples and oranges. You can't measure one style against another. That everything's got so much to give, and I love this stuff. I think this doesn't look anything like what I do, but I love it because it's so dynamic. It's so in your face. I mean that is fucking drop dead. It's gorgeous. It's such a good panel. So I'll be jumping in on this book.
I've learned two things. One thing is I've learned, because I've had a hard time with this, is when someone, says, "Wow, it's a really good piece," you say thank you. You know what I mean, and just leave it at that. But I feel the same way about Russ's stuff. Like it was one of those you want to support everybody that you can support. You know what I mean?
Can't go everywhere. Yeah,
you can't. But Russ was a book where I saw it and I was like, I will get this, because I again, not my style, but man, just brought me back to a time when I was like, I remember when I was into comics and it was like this, and that was a good feeling. And I was like, I want this because again, it captured it. You know what I mean? Like you know what I mean? You could look at this and you could easily be transported. And it was that, everything locked in like that. And it was that across the board, consistent. And it was, and so I feel the same way about your art. I really do, man. So
we're good.
Well, let's take a
I was saying, I know, Mo, I thought the same thing. I'm all right with 69 for a little bit.
Nice.
So. Let's refresh it.
See? Apparently, 69 is supposed to be sitting around.
I was just apparently everybody's comfortable with it sitting at that number for a little while longer.
You know?
So yeah, George, you still say
That was fun.
what is Liefeld doing? That
I know. That was funny when you said. I laughed too when he said that. I ain't gonna lie.
That it's one of those things where a lot of people, myself included, have ripped on Liefeld for a long time. But one of the other things that I say at the same time is that Liefeld, it's undeniable that he had an enormous impact on the comic book industry. Starting in the late 80s, continuing through the 90s, and he still has a very loyal fan base. So
I will plant my flag in the ground, okay, and say I think I'm better in anatomy than Rob Liefeld is. Okay, I'll say that out loud to everybody.
I'll co-sign that.
But there are absolutely no comic book creators out there that can slag him off, okay, unless they, okay, have done as much for the industry as he's done,
100%.
unless they've created as many comics, entertained as many people, has been energetic about comics as he has. So it's very easy to sit and criticize someone's style or whatever, but walk in their shoes, and then maybe you can make a comment about them. We can talk about basics and anatomy and bits and pieces and have a laugh about it, but the guy's brilliant. He's just got so much energy, and he's created so many comics, done so many pages. I can't.
No, 100%. I don't think you could tell a full story of the comic book industry without bringing.
No, exactly.
When he came out, when he was doing New Mutants, you know what I mean. There was something about what he brought that was definitely altered things, but it was fun and it was great to look at, man. I mean, his run on New Mutants, that especially when you get to like 98, 99, 100. He is fucking smoking in there. Yeah. He gets into X-Force. It stays like this when it gets to the end, and then he gets into, the Image shit, which again, looking at it from this standpoint now, you know what I'm saying? He's not just writing. He's not just drawing. He is doing everything. You realize how difficult, and trying to get it out monthly, right? Yep. You realize how difficult that is when you're not just getting a check to sit there and draw pictures. When you got to run every aspect of the production, it's a lot, man. It's a lot.
And then when you factor in that he was a young guy, I mean, he was just barely an adult when he got started. I mean, he started as a teen, and then at Image, he was just barely.
He was making money hand over fucking fist, dude.
Yeah, I mean, he made more than his fair share of mistakes with it, but that's one of the things that I used to not take into account. Was that how young he was when he found success, and then when he decided to start his own studio, and he became one of the founding members of Image and all of that. So now that I've been able to see just how much work it is just trying to self-publish something, let alone start a company and then bring other people on board and all of that, it really is.
And as a pro artist back then, if you were popular and you were pumping pages out, you didn't have time to go back and check. You just had to get things done.
100%.
So it happens. He entertained. You see, that was still before the bubble happened in the 90s. We were still in a situation where comics were pulp. Mm-hmm. They only became valuable because they'd been pulp. Because they were, pumped out once a week or once a month, and everybody went, "Oh yeah, this is great entertainment. There'll be another one next week. I'll throw that in the bin now." Okay, and that's why they became valuable, because they were rare, and chasing after this, with the whole of the industry, like chasing after, we must do number ones and we must have variant covers and all this kind of stuff, because they're trying to create that bubble again, but that bubble can't exist again ever. The only way that comics can be valuable is by their rarity. And actually, that's where crowdfunding could come in. And we could see something else come up from the crowdfunding industry. Okay, that in 5 years' time, when a whole bunch of crowdfunders have had their original books out there, and then they get taken on by publishers to reprint their work. Well,
Right.
just think how valuable the original crowdfunded volume will be when there was only 2, 3, 4, 500 printed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
100%.
That seems
100%.
like a good place to end the show today. I want to thank everybody in the chat for showing up and giving us a little bit of
For
your
Leroy.
time.
Get it, chat. All of them. All of them. I ain't gonna be able to say enough of them, but you had them all in there. Mo, Finatra, the crackhead, Leroy. I'm sure I'm leaving Dave. I'm sure I'm leaving a bunch of people out.
Yeah,
That's why I never like to say names, because I always leave names off. Always. Jim Cox was here. You know, everybody. Like I said, Phil was here. Amanda was here. All the regulars, man.
Good people.
Yeah, all good, great people.
And we understand that you guys could choose to do anything else with your time, but you're choosing to spend it with us, and we appreciate you. Absolutely.
100%. And I just want to say this as well. Thank you to you guys, man, for, asking me to be your first guest. It's a privilege. It is. You know what I mean? So I really appreciate you guys thinking about me and allowing me to come on here and be your first guest. That's really cool, man.
Oh, we're happy to have you, man. Russ and
the
I
coolest
both
of guests. Yes.
Yeah.
So far, I'm the coolest guest you've had.
Yeah. No. The coolest of guests. You will remain my top coolest guest forever, Anthony. I tell you.
My man Russ, man. I'll tell you.
Yeah. All right, guys. I hope you really enjoyed the show. If you don't mind giving it a like, if you did enjoy it, you can subscribe to the channel if you want to see more shows where we talk comics, we talk life, we talk storytelling in general, and we reveal new artwork from the Outliers each and every single week. We're here every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific. Hope you guys go out and make a great day.
Do свидания.